Okay, the ice cream truck will come by. Just I hope y'all can't hear the ice cream truck.
It says we are live.
Great, great, great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Monica Lucas with Serenity Counseling Services of Virginia, and we are really happy to be back with you in our virtual space. As an agency, we strive to make sure that we are community based, community driven. And we normally have a series called Workshop Wednesdays where we come up with relevant topics that impact the community. And we normally do those Workshop Wednesdays in libraries and different places throughout the community. But due to social distancing and the safety of all, we have found ourselves for the last couple of months in our virtual space. And so we are having our community conversation tonight, definitely on a relevant topic. 2020 has definitely given us a lot to talk about, to say the least. And in one of those areas that has been trending very heavily and continues to be a topic of discussion for many people is the idea of social injustice, police brutality, and racism that is consistent in our country, and in recent days has come to the forefront again as we all were social distancing, kind of staying in away from our normal means of life, work, and family. And we were all at home, unfortunately, to witness the horrible death of George Floyd, which really kind of kicked off a national and a global, microscopic view of racism, police brutality, and social injustice. So we wanted to bring together different perspectives from different people. We have an awesome group of folks that are joining us tonight. And before I get into those introductions, I would like to just take a moment to call out the names of people who have been directly impacted by these topics. So if you would just give me a few minutes, I'm going to call out several names. And after that, we will get into introductions of the persons on our panel. Um, Dontre Hamilton, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, John Crawford III, Elijah McClain, Michael Brown, Ezel Ford, Dante Parker, Sandra Bland, Marcus David Peters, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and most recently, Rayshard Brooks. So we just wanted to just kind of highlight the names of these individuals because, their lives mean a lot more than the storylines that we have received involving, the different things that happened that led to their deaths. And so we want to highlight this discussion because we want to be in a pattern where we're moving forward away from these names of people being called out for senseless death, victimization by police, racism, injustice, brutality, unnecessary brutality. So with that, like I said, we have an exciting panel joining us tonight. And so I'm going to start with Ms. Jennifer Kell. She is a licensed clinical social worker with more than 20 years of experience in the mental health field. She enjoys working with all ages and specializes in working with victims of domestic violence, childhood abuse, and sexual assault. 2 years ago, Jennifer co-founded Robin's Hope, which is a nonprofit trauma recovery center. Robin's Hope offers a number of groups at no cost to adults healing from the impact of overwhelming life events. As the executive director of Ryan's Hope, she is always busy learning new skills as well as creating groups and activities to help participants feel safe and cared for as they heal. She also works part-time for Serenity Counseling Services of Virginia, as a clinical supervisor and an assessor. She's passionate about helping people recover from different life events and assisting them in developing skills that will help them as they move forward in life. All right, and this is where our applause will come in. So I'm going to give you a round of applause and
Thank you.
welcome you into our community conversation space. We are so glad to have you with us. Next, we have Jeffrey Culbert's son. Jeffrey is a qualified mental health professional working with both children and adults. He is also a graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and he holds a master's degree in human services counseling from Liberty University. Jeffrey has a passion for mental health. He, in April of 2018, he rededicated his life and has since vowed to serve the underprivileged and underrepresented individuals in the community faithfully. He is currently a substance abuse counselor at a local methadone clinic and the founder of Impact Counseling LLC. And I have to mention that is letter M, Pact Counseling LLC. And he also is the founder of God Plus Therapy LLC. Jeffrey has experienced in counseling individuals who suffer from substance abuse, defiant behaviors, criminal backgrounds, depression, anxiety, and many other mental and emotional conditions. So we'd like to welcome Jeffrey to our virtual community conversation room. Yeah. So glad to have you. So, all right, so let's get to it. Let us kind of tackle this thing of social injustice and what that, what is social injustice? Let me give you a definition that I was able to find. Social injustice is a relative concept about the claimed unfairness or injustice of a society in its divisions of rewards and burdens and other incidental inequalities based on the user's worldview of humanity. Immorality is often used as a synonym for this. What do you all think about that?
I'll let Jennifer go first.
Okay.
I think that's a lot of words.
Yeah, it is.
I like the the melding of immorality as a synonym for social injustice.
Exactly.
I think it's a term that we can all kind of relate to, even if we couldn't define it. It's just wrong. Speaking to making judgments arbitrarily based on something that has no pertinence to the issue at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get medical treatment because you have money.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Right.
you get treated poorly because the color of your skin.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Jeffrey, what do you think about that?
So
That's my thoughts.
in my mind, I think social injustice, it starts with, racism, social injustice, I think is all in the same family there. I think they all are systematic. And what I mean by that is you have, let's take for example, you have two individuals where they are on the separate side of the tracks. And me growing up, I was actually one of those individuals who lived on the separate side of the tracks. I lived in, I don't know who's familiar with the Chesapeake area of Virginia, but I lived in Camelot. And at the time, I remember coming home one time seeing a dead body in our parking lot. I mean, not parking lot, but in the middle of our street. Of course, 2 weeks later, my mom had a for sale sign up. Next thing I know, I was in Great Bridge. Completely different worlds. And I
Right.
realized, and I never lost connection with my friends that were in Camelot, but I just realized the different education background or the education that I was getting. And then once we graduated, we were still held to the same responsibilities, the same what's the same system. They were like, hey, you graduated, now you need to get a job, or you need to go to school. And it's like we weren't even educated the same way. I had tutors in Great Bridge. All I had to do was pick up my phone, had a tutor. I had a good friend, he was like, a tutor? I just don't know it. I'm just not gonna do it. And it's like you're expecting these young men and women who are from low income families to do the same thing that they're doing, that these higher income families, like Jennifer was saying, if you have a certain amount of money, you get a certain type of medication. Where here you have these individuals are coming out of high school who don't have the equipped with the same thing. So I think social injustice starts right there in the education field, in the education
Sure.
aspect of the world. Like you can't expect me to say, hey, go create a bank account where I haven't even been to a bank, or there's only 2 banks on my side of town. Where here on the other side of town, in 5th grade, they did a field trip to a bank, so they know what a bank is, what a bank is, what a bank account is, what a checkbook is, what a routing number is. Here, I'm just like, I'm just gonna keep my money in the bank. I mean, in the sofa.
Right, right. And and there's so many examples of social injustice. Um, I oftentimes refer to an example. There is a McDonald's restaurant that is on Patterson Avenue as you are heading out west, kind of, near, it's in Glen Allen. But like I said, straight up Patterson Avenue, kind of past Gaskins.
Okay.
And the McDonald's literally has a grand piano inside of the restaurant.
I know
Okay.
exactly.
And the first time I went there, I was really, really like thrown off because I was like, okay, wait a minute, where am I? I'm in a McDonald's and there's a grand piano inside of the McDonald's. And I was just asking, like, why is there a grand piano? And they were like, well, there are a few people in the community and they come by every now and then and they play the piano. And I thought this was really nice. I mean, I was like, okay, that's nice. And I kept thinking to myself, but why is it that the McDonald's that's at the corner of Broad and 18th, right across from the Exxon gas station, why doesn't that one have a baby grand piano where all of our is predominantly a homeless population that kind of hangs out down there. We have a lot of African Americans. I mean, and just all kinds of cultures because it's a growing neighborhood. A lot of condos and different apartment space down there, but young people, young people who are in school and different things like that. And I kept thinking, like, this is not something that I would see anywhere else. So what gives this McDonald's like the edge that this is like a privileged space versus every other McDonald's serving the same kind of food, you know?
Right.
So the images like that I think speak to where we have kind of gotten into this conversation about Uncle Ben finally retiring from many years of serving on the box of rice. Auntie Mama, and it's so funny. My mother was born in 1940, and when I said something to her about the fact that Aunt Jemima was coming off the box, she said to me, she said, "Well, a few years back, couple years back, they fixed her hair. She took they took her scarf off her hair and they fixed her hair." And I kept thinking to myself, I never noticed any of that. Like, and so, again, I think, that people recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday. I mean, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, names Juneteenth as a state holiday. I think that is, I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but I think also when we talk about social injustice, it is a step in the right direction. But, I think people, African Americans, are just really not sold that we have arrived yet, even
Yeah.
with you know that being a reality for many of us who celebrated Juneteenth in a way, seeing that it being celebrated in a way that had never really been celebrated before.
Yeah.
Um,
I I was going to say that like the social injustice does 2 things, and there's 2 things I want to say to that. One of the things it does, it for both parties, it limits our knowledge of each other. And if you're limiting our knowledge from each other at the beginning stages, then you're going to have police brutality. You're going to have racism. Because I just don't know anything about you. I'd rather stay with people who look like me. I'd rather go to an HBCU. I'd rather, even though I didn't know what to VCU, but these are the narratives that people are having. And I think the only reason I went to VCU, because I did attend Elizabeth City State, is because I knew what Great Bridge did for me. So I knew what
yeah,
VCU was going to do for me in the future. And it's sad that because like on the flip side is they're going to stay on their side of the tracks and we're staying on our side of the tracks. So there's no connection. there's no platform or no interaction with each other. So we're going to have police brutality. We're going to have fear. We're going to have uninformed people walking around policing us or walking around leading us. I like to tell people, the second thing I was going to say, and it's funny that you say what you said about the June 19th or the Confederate state having June 19th. I think what suffering does, and this is definitely suffering from this coming right after a pandemic or during a pandemic, we're in the middle of a suffering season. And I truly believe that suffering brings inspiration and information. Perfect example. Because of the suffering I was going through, I decided to go and to do some research. And my wife will tell you this. I was astonished like the last 2 days when I did this, that this actually happened. If I bring up the village, Seneca Village, will anyone here know what Seneca Village is? So
nope, not a clue.
I would tell you exactly what it is. In 1825, Seneca Village had about 225 or so residents there. And in this residence, there were free slaves and Irish immigrants there. They were thriving. They had schools, they had churches, they had police stations, they had fire stations. They were a thriving community. Everyone was employed, everyone was making money, everyone was getting along. There wasn't any racism. It was an amazing community. This community was in New York, in the city of New York. The city of New York decided to say, you know what I'm going to do? We need a place for leisure recreations. We need a place for that. Where can we get that place? So they decided to pay these people. Let's take it to nowadays. Let's say we paid the people in Wickham Court $1,200 to move out. Now and expect them to go find a place with $1,200 and find a new job. Because not only did you move out of your house, but you had to leave your job, you had to leave your school. So now we're telling you to go out and we're only going to give you $1,200. And so that's exactly what they did with these individuals. Guess what they put in place at that village? Central Park.
Oh,
Never knew that until I did research. And the only reason I did research was because of my suffering I was going through. I said, I need to find something like what's going on. Like, let's talk about, I need to figure out more about my ancestors, my ancestors and my history, and just learn more about my culture. And like, I can't run around here and say I'm black just because of my skin is color. Like, if I'm going to be proud, I need to know who I am and where I come from. And so I started, and because I started doing research, I was able to find that. So I think what June 19th did and painting Black Lives Matter on 16th Avenue and all that stuff, I just think it brought inspiration and more information to the other crowd, to the other individuals that we're here on this world with.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that because, like I said, because we were kind of outside of our norm of, just kind of being social distance and at home and in different environments, we were, people were able to see, because the same thing that George Floyd said as he was dying is the same thing that Eric Gardner said just a few years earlier. And, we heard it, but it was not broadcast the way that it was broadcast this time, for people to truly see that, here was this man who was literally dying in front of people, because this police officer had his knee on his neck with his hand in his pocket. And it didn't even respond to other officers who said, the mere fact that somebody walked up and said he doesn't have a pulse and he still didn't move his knee, was just troublesome. And so I think, worldwide people were able to see what, so yes, definitely a point of being educated and inspired to think outside the box, to think about, the fact that we've been, the NAACP in Hanover County had asked 2 years ago that the name of Lee Davis High School be changed. And they, it got shot down. And now you have in Hanover County just last week where they held a protest where there were Blacks, whites, other cultures represented, saying that this has got to change. So, I think that it is, it's definitely inspiring a lot of education. I think people have been moved by the different faces that they've seen around the Lee Monument of people who have lost their lives due to social injustice, racism, police brutality, and, all of these things kind of working in concert together. Okay. Any other comments about social injustice? Anything? Okay. So let's move on to police brutality. And of course, this is a hot topic. And I was trying to do some research to just kind of figure out some of the names that have not yet been heard as much in the forefront of the news. So I found this story about Jermaine Mcmillan. Jermaine was a 14-year-old. This was back in 2013. He was 14 years old, and he was feeding his puppy while playing on the beach with some friends when some cops riding ATVs approached him and asked what he was doing. These police officers on the ATVs, they were known as the peacekeeping officers. They saw Mcmillan roughhousing with another teenager and told him that it was unacceptable behavior. And they also asked him where his mother was. When Mcmillan walked away, they chased him on ATVs, jumped out, pinned him to the ground, and arrested him. And according to their reports, Mcmillan attempted to pull his arm away, stating, "Man, don't touch me like I did something." And so this was back in 2013 in Miami-Dade County. Um, this is what happened back then. And they arrested him. And so what they said is that he was clenching his fist. And so he said, "No, I wasn't, because I was holding my puppy." Um, and so, when we hear about stories like this and what we've seen so far, also, we will, before we close out tonight, we were trying to kind of play the audio from Elijah McClain's interaction with the police that unfortunately cost him his life when he was going to a store to pick up something. He had a mask on, a ski mask on, and the police approached him, and he's heard begging for his life, trying to explain to the police that he had anemia and he needed to cover his face because of health reasons. But unfortunately, he lost his life because the police, of course, did not believe him. So when we talk about police brutality, we're talking about excessive force. We're talking about just an overwhelming presence of authority, disbelief of other races, particularly it happening to African Americans. And of course, this is also led by racial profiling. So what do you say about this topic?
I'll let Jennifer go.
Well, because I'm a trauma therapist, everything I see tends to relate in terms of trauma. And kind of what I'm seeing with all of this is if I don't have enough training or comfort level, I operate from a state of fear. And when I'm in a state of fear, I'm going to be thrown into my trauma brain, which is going to put me into fight flight. If I've been trained to use a weapon and given one, I'm going to be prone to going into fight. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing is maybe well-intentioned humans that are overwhelmed and don't have the proper training and tools at best that become overly aggressive. And then at work, have people who have entrenched negative beliefs that have absolutely no business being given a weapon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can go deeper into that, and actually took my point right out of my mouth, actually. And I neglected to tell you in the bio, but for 13 years, I was a probation officer. So I was surrounded by law enforcement. And the thing I've noticed in law enforcement, I don't know if you ever noticed this, and I'm pretty sure you haven't because you haven't been in the law enforcement training facility or academy. But did you know that low-income neighborhoods and low-income family members, predominantly Black family members, are called training grounds, are called training neighborhoods. And what I mean by that is what they do is put the rookie officers, the young men who are fresh out of the academy, they throw them in the training neighborhoods. And then when you get seasoned, you get to go into the less high crime neighborhoods. You get to go into your West Ends and your Stony Points. You get to go over there because there's no crime there, and you're a seasoned vet. But you have to what they say is wait your turn, and you have to be trained correctly in the training neighborhoods. This is the title guys. And you, like I said, you have, and she nailed it. So imagine a 6-month training, and it's funny that you have to do 6 months of police academy, but you got to go 2 years to learn how to press and cornrow. Doesn't sound right to me. And so you got to do at least 2 years for cosmetology school. But when you're in the police academy, it's about six to 8 months, depending on what department you're going in. But the initial is about 6 or 8 months, and then you get thrown into Gilpin Court. Court. You get thrown into this area, and then again, going back to my first analogy, you're from Great Bridge. You don't know anything about the other sides of the track. You just don't know. You don't know the communication. You don't know the verbiage. You don't know what's the stressful environment and what's not a stressful environment. My wife and I the other day, and it was kind of funny. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were driving, and we just saw 2 young little black males slap boxing. I know growing up, it was like a game. Like you just with your cousin and you guys are slap boxing. There's no ill intent. It's just excitement. But let somebody who's fresh out of academy sees that. And the first thing he's going to stick in his mind is, like she said, I'm in danger. And my trauma mind comes into play, and whatever is either fight or flight. And 9 times out of 10, when you get someone who has a badge who never had that kind of power before, that flight is out the question. It's fight time. It's completely out the question. And in all those 2 individuals doing, you had 2 8-year-old boys just slap boxing, and we have done it so many times. And if these people are not in the community with us, if they're not sitting down with us, if they're not talking to us so they can learn our language, because what you do, if you ever notice something else about the police academy, and it's so heartbreaking for me, is because you will see Asian police officers in Asian neighborhoods. You will see Spanish police officers in Spanish neighborhoods. And why is that? It's because they speak their language. I'll be completely honest. I don't want Tim and Daniel in my neighborhood. I need Tyrone in my neighborhood. I need Earl in my neighborhood. Someone who grew up with me and understands our language and knows how do we talk to each other, because he can de-escalate a domestic violence quickly. He can de-escalate a fight or a shootout quickly, instead of coming in and as soon as you come to my house, my first thought is, because you're a Thomas and because what's going on, you're coming to kill me now. If growing up, as a black male now, I was telling my wife in my job the other day that I'm afraid to go outside now. I work at a substance abuse clinic, and during the time we had the curfew, I had to be in the office at 5:30. I literally called my boss or my program director and say, hey, I'm scared to come to work because I'm a young black male, and you gave me a piece of paper saying that I'm a clinic, I'm essential work and all that good stuff. But if I reach for that paper in that glove department, guess what's gonna happen to me?
Right.
I'm terrified to get on the road and come to work. Terrified. I just had a daughter. I don't want her to grow up without her father.
Sure.
And so they understood that. And again, they understood it because I was able to express myself that. If we can't express ourselves to these individuals, these young men who are coming out of the academy, guess what's going to happen? We're going to get shot.
Yeah.
They're going to fight and not flight.
To that point, Jennifer, what would you say with respect to how we should manage the trauma from everything that we have, experienced, from an African American perspective? This stuff is not new to us. And of course, the culture has bred where parents teach their sons and their daughters, to put their hands on. They have this conversation about, if you get stopped by police, you got to put your hands on the steering wheel, make sure they see your hands at all times, and that sort of thing. And so, it's a cultural divide because this is not a conversation that's had in Caucasian households or, any other race, for that matter, but definitely in the African American community. And it's traumatizing because now, even more so now that we have, witnessed this excessive force, back to back, times, it is really almost terrifying. So what would you say to that?
So it needs to change. First and foremost, it needs to change. And then just being able to talk about it openly, being able to share. I think white people need to hear it so they understand the normal experience.
Right.
Hearing that's what gets taught in homes where there's color issues. I certainly wasn't taught that. I was taught you get pulled over, you give them your license and your registration. My registration's in the glove compartment.
Right.
The very first thing I do is lean over and get in the glove compartment.
Right.
You know, thinking about this from color perspective, if I were Black and doing that, that puts me at imminent risk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And just thinking about that absolute cultural divide, that's a norm for me. Oh, let me go and get him what he wants because my expectation is that this is somebody who's here to help me. And if I'm doing wrong, then it's my own daggone fault, and he's going to give me a piece of paper, and I'm going to go about my merry way and do what I need to do. To grow up and not have that expectation is unconscionable. Right? Mm-hmm. These are folks that our tax dollars are using to fund to keep our community safe, and that should mean that all of our expectation is that we are safe in these interactions, unless and until we've done something wrong.
Right, right. And so
I think in this time it's tough because as we have these conversations and as the protests are going on, it's enacting all of the previous traumas that we've had. And that gets really difficult because now I'm sitting with what's going on in today. And I'm also viscerally remembering those things that have happened to me before. And I have to then get some help if I'm getting stuck in that, or get somebody that I can process with so I can take those pieces apart. What's now, what's then, and how can I communicate that? Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of people that have been saying they're afraid to speak on it because they've been so acculturated to keep it quiet, to not say anything, or they'll apologize to me. I don't want to offend you. You're not going to offend me by telling me what happened to you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, last week. Mm-hmm. I didn't do it. Why am I going to catch offense?
Right. Right. Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, situations that I remember a few years back in 2017 when Philando Castile was in his car with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend was begging the police officer not to shoot her boyfriend. You know, just like that. This man is shot and killed as she is saying, please, Mr. Police Officer, please don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. And even closer to home, when we think about Marcus David Peters, you know, this young man who at the beginning of the day, he taught school. He obviously was suffering from some type of mental health psychosis because he was not presenting himself in a way that, you know, people could recognize. So by the time he got to his part-time job, they, you know, really didn't recognize his behavior, and someone called the police on him, but he had left by the time the police got there. When they caught up with him, he was right on the loop off of Chamberlain Avenue, Belvedere, going on to 95, but he was completely naked, with no weapon, but definitely in a psychotic condition, you know. And we, as mental health practitioners, we know psychosis is not an easy thing to manage. However, it is easy to manage when a person does not have a weapon. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and so that person can be eventually subdued, you know, through some type of physical interaction, but physical restraint is not intended to kill a person. Mm-hmm. And so now we have this individual whose family has been fighting to get some type of legislation that will allow, and when we talk about this defunding of the police, dollars to go towards mental health professionals who can respond to a crisis call, you know, maybe along with the police or instead of the police, to better manage that situation, so we don't have a situation where a person who needs help is then gunned down, you know, and, you know, just kind of in the situation and the reality of what happened to him. You know, what do you think about that? I mean, what direction should we go in?
So I feel, and this is going back to the probation training that I required throughout the 13 years, and I've noticed that And they even asked about this. I said, where is the, this is when I knew I was in the wrong field. I was, where is the mindset training here? Where is our mental health training here? Oh, the department doesn't have enough money to bring in a mental therapist. But don't forget to wear your physical clothes tomorrow because we're doing physical defense tactics tomorrow. And it's like, but we have someone, we can pay someone to come in to teach us how to fight, but we don't have someone coming in to teach us how to fight with our minds. We don't have someone teaching us conflict resolutions. We don't have someone teaching us stress management skills or coping mechanisms. We don't even have someone teaching us how to pray. You know, it's just amazing how they just send us out there with all these, like, literally, I am a walking weapon right now from the knowledge that I know from the training I got. And it's a physical weapon. I literally can take someone down who's about three sizes bigger than me because of the physical training. But I didn't get the mental training until I got out of that field and started going to school and started doing my research and started actually seeking the training and seeking counsel for the mental health and the mindset coaching skills that I have now. And so it's just, they have to revamp the entire training program. Because if you're sending me out here to protect and serve away from conflict, but I don't have any true conflict resolution skills, how do you expect me to do it without pulling my gun? How do you expect me to do it in a way that's sensible? How do you expect me to do it when how do you expect me to look at someone who's running down a 95 naked and not come trigger my head to go tackle him, but trigger my head to shoot him? Like, that's what the training is. We have to learn to revamp, or they have to learn to revamp the entire training. The same amount of weeks that we have with the physical training, it should be the same amount of weeks that we have with the physical. They should have individuals like ourselves coming in, teaching these individuals how to create conflict resolutions.
Right. I mean, because, honestly, I have worked with individuals who have, particularly individuals with autism, who just didn't want to wear clothes, and so, so that is nothing that is foreign to me, and I have seen it with some of my patients at the hospital. When they are in psychosis, they just don't really kind of conform to the norms of society. And so it's not something, I think, to a lay person, they probably wouldn't know how to handle that. But I'm just thinking, like, a person who is unclothed in a public setting, the last thing I'm thinking is that they are a threat, which requires deadly force. Even in a situation with Rayshard Brooks, many people I've heard African Americans say, well, he shouldn't have taken the taser from the police officer. He was wrong for doing that. And not that he deserved to die, but he should have just allowed them to arrest him and take him to jail, and he would probably be alive today. This is what I heard some African Americans say in the hair salon. And that's culturally, that's where we get
That's
the
all the
depth
good
of our
information to come.
news, and that's where the barbershop and the hair salon. That's where the depth of our news, different types of news comes from. And I thought it was such an interesting perspective because there's so many woulda, coulda, shouldas relating to that situation. And I think it starts with, whoever saw Rayshard Brooks as a threat working in the Wendy's, that was afraid to maybe just go out and tap on his window to make sure that he was not, not about him being asleep, or, he could have been sick and he could have been ill. So, why didn't somebody just tap on the window to say, hey, are you okay? Which might have woke him up, and, can I call somebody? Can I call you a ride? I see you not, and we might not ever have known his name. But then as it kind of played out, and and in this climate where, again, there is fear, like Jennifer mentioned, where you fight or flight, because you are afraid as a Black man that you might not make it back home. So what do I do in this
It's
time? And so, yeah, I think this is
And,
training is relevant.
I think it gets really difficult too, though, because we can train folks, but what we've got now is a culture that's terrified of police. So we give them skills, they're still going out, and the people they're interacting with are going to be triggered into fight flight. And we know when you're in that place, you're not using your rational thought mind, you're doing things that are irrational, and you're escalated yourself. I can think of a friend that I have that has dealt with trauma. When she gets into her fight flight, I don't want to mess with her.
Mm-hmm.
But if a police officer were to come up on her, it would be a miracle if she didn't get arrested in those times. So I think, yes, we need better training, but then we also have to address where people are to help everybody kind of settle back down to get to a point where everybody can feel safe. Because if one person doesn't feel safe, it's not going to be a safe situation.
Right.
So I would
Right.
love to go deeper with that, Jennifer, because I completely agree with you. And even what I said from the beginning, the difference between when I was in Great Bridge, the friends I had in Great Bridge, and the individuals I were in Deep Creek, we were just separate. And so, to your point, if the police officers and the police academy can stop making things so secret, if we can just know, if we know what type of training you have now, I know when you come into my office or you come into my house or you come to my neighborhood, I know what you're doing because I'm aware of the type of training. Instead of saying, "Oh, this is just a secret op," I don't know what that means. You could be teaching 5 police officers how to beat down somebody. I don't know what that means, and so because I don't know what that means and I'm not educated, then I don't have the wisdom that you have or what you're doing, then I can't move that way. So I'm gonna back off. And I'm going to look at you as a threat. And the same concept with the police officers. They don't know what we're doing either or what we're saying. So they're going to think we're a threat every single time. And I'm just an individual, just like Bible study. How am I a threat? And it's because they don't have the education that we have of ourselves, and we don't have the education that they have to themselves. So if we can just start being open books and having conversations together, and then just having just communities having conversations, and that's it. Invite police officers, invite the chief of police, invite these people so they can hear what we have to say and hear our words and hear how we think and how we move. And then you tell us, okay, what does training look like? What does investigations look like? What does this mean? What does it mean he's going to be handled accordingly? What does that mean?
Right.
Because these are all to me is just big giant school words.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that there needs to be, I mean, just like with us, like, in the scope of mental health, we are required to, be trained annually in certain things, certain topics. And I'm just wondering, is that required for police officers where they have to be recertified in different things?
Yeah.
And then is it just the same old material that they had since they were, starting 20 years ago as a police officer, or is it upgraded according to the times and the culture that we're in? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me that they had to, after Breonna Taylor was murdered in her home, come back with legislation that says you can't just run up in somebody's house, because that's a common sense factor. Like, again, she died, but I kept thinking, what if she had a child? What if she had, I mean, what if it was, I mean, just anybody, her grandmother could have been in there. And, obviously, if you go in, kicking the door in and shooting automatically 10 rounds, from your gun, somebody is going to get killed. But it's like, okay, I guess the mindset was that we just don't even care who's on the other side of this door, because, all we're thinking about is that we got to get them, and we're in the right neighborhood where that could be justified.
But even when it's not, I'm thinking of, there was a situation a year or maybe 2 ago in the West End where a mentally ill woman, her therapist called a well check for her, and the police busted into her home. She was asleep and they killed her.
Yes.
On a well check. So they had no expectation of danger. They were in a upper middle class neighborhood. There was no reason to suspect that somebody was going to be a threat to them, and yet it still ended in tragedy. So there's definitely something very wrong with the training or the policies, something there for those things to happen.
Yeah.
I would step up and say that I truly believe it's not changed. I think the kids today are still learning about the same Christopher Columbus that I learned, and I went to school in 1990. I was in elementary in 1990s, and so this is the same books. This is being passed down from generation to generation. So technically, we literally have a generational curse right here. And if
Right.
we don't do something, that generational curse is going to be passed down to my son and my daughter, or it's going to be passed down to
Right.
your son and daughter. And so I truly believe that there is no real awareness. I think it's becoming awareness, but there's no real awareness, excuse me, of a mental check. Like Jennifer was saying, before I come in here with my gun blazing, let me do a mental check. Let me check their
Right.
lips. Let me see their eyes. Let me see, are they sweating? Let me see, because you don't know, someone just probably got off the phone and dealing with a loss of a family, or a death of a family member, or a death of a loved
Mm-hmm.
one, and now they went straight into trauma mode. And now you're coming in as a police officer, adding on to that trauma, adding
Sure.
on, or for my case, someone could be going through withdrawal symptoms. And I
Right.
don't know if you ever see anybody who's going through withdrawal symptoms. That's not a pretty sight. And if you come
Mm-hmm.
in and with your guns on high and on 100, you're increasing the environment to be a deadly environment, to be a high risk.
Sure.
Or you can easily come in, and if you get trained right with the mental health training that you need, that they need, they can de-escalate the entire situation with just words. With
Right.
just words, it would de-escalate the entire. I can't talk how many people I have talked out of their feelings of their emotions and the feelings of their withdrawal symptoms, just by changing their narrative and the thoughts in their mind. And once you can get to that, wow, you can change the entire behavior of someone.
Right.
I used to do arrests in my office, and all I had to do is tell them, hey, I have to put you on arrest. And I've seen people who have been the nicest person, we had the best rapport, but once you start talking about taking their freedom away, oh, they get jumpy. It's ready to go. And I have been in altercations with individuals who have attacked me. But all I had to do was use my words. I never had to use my gun. I never had to use my cuff. I mean, not my cuff, but my mace or anything. All of that was under my desk, and they used to tell me, Jeff, why don't you carry your gun? Because it costs too much attention. I have enough power right here. God has given me the power right here to de-escalate any situation. And if we can teach our police officers that you have the weapon of victory, the weapon of killing mass destruction, then guess
Right.
what? You can overcome any single situation that you're in front of. Now, I'm not
Right.
saying you don't have to, like that gun is just like should be the last thing. That could be a safety net. But once you get used to using this and know how to use this, you can tight walk across that road without that net.
Mm-hmm.
Show me somebody that can do that, and I show you a true man. I show you a true man that's going to protect and serve.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, it is we need more conversation around this whole idea, because I think that it is, we have to bring mental health definitely into the conversation, and not just for people in general and far as educating officers and that sort of thing, but I think that it needs to be commonplace for officers to
Mm-hmm.
have a means where they too can participate in therapy at least once every quarter or once every month or something, because we fight against this stigma around mental health and mental illness and mental trauma, and yet police officers are dealing with various situations all the time, and with
Absolutely.
and under the and respectfully, there are many good women who represent the whole good cop attitude and behavior, but I think that there is a male dominance with our police officers, our police forces across the country. And there is this thing of, oh, I'm going to look weak if I go talk to a therapist or I
Mm-hmm.
go talk to somebody about how I'm feeling. But I think that mental health definitely needs to be represented at the table, when we're talking about how police understand persons in the community, as well as what they do to help
Take
themselves.
care of themselves.
I
I
agree.
think that's it. One of the things that needs to change is it needs to not penalize them in their job
Hmm.
performance, because
Yeah.
right now there is a kickback if you reach out for help, if you seek that help.
Yeah.
Right.
However, there are some places that are making strides. I know Richmond PD put in a yoga room. They've done some resilience training. I'm not sure if that was with across the board or just with particular units, but there's starting to be some positive change there. You've got cops doing yoga. Something's
Yeah.
changing.
I mean, absolutely, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's big.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
I
I
mean,
think
it's got to be
the
something.
other piece of that too is that it becomes a, like you were saying, Jeffrey, that mindset of I have to take on my authority by just knowing that it's there, right? A good boss, like Monica owns a business. She didn't have to run around all day going, I'm the boss, you better listen to me, I'm the boss. If you don't listen, I'm going to fire you. Everybody knows that. So you do your job, and if there's a problem, then you call your authority forward. And I think that's something that we need to enculturate better in our police training, that you have the authority. You don't have to prove it. We all know you've got it. We gave you the gun. We gave you the badge.
Right.
You got it. Now walk it out and only pull that authority forward when you need to.
Right.
What's
Absolutely.
the narrative that are they going out into the neighborhood? Like that young man who walked to Breonna Taylor's house. What was your narrative as soon as you got out the car? What were you doing as soon as you got out the car? For as he think of within himself, so is he. So if he's thinking I'm Big Bad Joe, then guess what?
Yeah.
He's going to behave. I'm Big Bad Joe. I'm this guy who I'm going to take nothing from anybody. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure nobody, like Jennifer was saying, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure everybody knows I'm in control. And if you're walking out to the police academy with that mindset, you're going to shoot someone. It's just a matter of time. You're going to shoot someone because all someone has to do is just say, hey, why are you arresting me? And now you're thinking in your mindset,
how dare you question me?
Yeah, because you created this mindset that I am the boss. I am the King Kong around here. Y'all ain't got nothing on me. Perfect example was Denzel in Training Day. He thought he was the man until he got brought down to the ground and realized, hey, you're not King Kong for real.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and you know, and just to kind of close out on this particular topic, this is, you know, because I was one of those people trying to understand with Rayshard Brooks. I was like, okay, I understand that he is traumatized by what he has seen already worldwide, you know, with George Floyd. So here he is faced with the police. He admitted to them that he had, you know, had something to drink, was being cooperative initially. But I guess at some point he thought about it long enough to say, if I don't run out of here or try to get away from them, something's going to happen to me and I'm not going to make it home.
I don't know that it's even a thought. It's at that point where that threat builds and you lose the ability to think, and you're just in panic. Oh my God, I have to run away or I have to fight. There is no other option.
Yeah. I mean, you know, because that authority has gone awry. That authority has become overly excessive to the point that as a Black man, he probably was thinking, if I don't get away from them, I'm not going to make it home. And, you know, and this probably what motivated his attempt to break out of the handcuffs, to try to, you know, fight with them and, you know, kind of get away, grab the taser, at least to kind of ward him off, to say, you know, get away from me, I'm running away. And then, you know, he shot in his back. And, you know, so then when I learned that the police officer then kind of kicked him and was like, okay, yeah, I got you. That is where that excessive authority and the mere fact that they waited to call for help for him. They waited to call ambulance and EMTs to come and help him when he was down. So I think that then is that authority that has totally gone way out of sync of what protecting and serving is all about, and what it should be. So we're going to move on to and broaden our discussion. I mean, everything that we're talking about kind of definitely relates, but the definition for racism that I found was prejudice, discrimination, and antagonism directed against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority and marginalized. That was our definition of racism, courtesy of Google. And so, so when we talk about racism and we talk about, you know, what traditionally, I can speak to the fact that, you know, I'm a 70s baby, and I used to ask my grandmother, who was born in 1900, I used to ask her, well, what was it like for, like Martin Luther King, when he would say his speeches and different things like that, and I think she was kind of like in a place where she was kind of over it, because although Dr. King had done so much, it still seemed as though not much had changed.
Mhm.
And, African Americans, her perspective was that I could always tell when there was like a day where she was going to have to do meet with someone. And at that time, the insurance companies would send a representative to the home. So if the insurance man was coming, my grandmother went the extra mile. Like we had to clean the house. If I was there the day before the insurance man came, which I tried not to be because we was cleaning baseboards. And I'm thinking, I'm used to Saturday cleaning, but I'd be like, Grandma, this is a Tuesday. And we don't really do this on Tuesday because I need to watch Happy Days and the Jeffersons and Good Times. And she'd be like, you better cut the TV off and get to scrubbing on the baseboards because, Mr. Staircastle is coming tomorrow. And I'd be like, who is this man? Like, who is this person that is so important? And again, her feelings of inferiority, um, led to her feeling as though, although we had just cleaned the house 2 days before, it was not cleaned enough. And she had to go the extra mile to then do so much more so that she would be respected by this gentleman who really, he was coming to get her money. And so, she, it should have been an expectation of good customer service from him, but she was more concerned about how she presented herself because she was feeling inferior before he even got there.
Mhm.
And so, so when I think about where we are now and, where this idea of racism has grown to other cultures, Henrico County Schools has a website where you can go on and share stories of racism. And a lot of students have been going online and chiming in, representing different cultures. And here we are, 2020, and this is the same accord of what we continue to hear in our community. And it's, we haven't really moved very much.
Mhm.
So what do you all think about that?
So it's my mind when I speak about this, people look at me different because my mind is countercultural and not anti-cultural, meaning I'm fully aware of what's going on. But I like to believe that if we as individuals can start treating racism as what it is, which is a sin. Our first commandment and first instruction by God was to love your neighbor. And it's crazy because what happens is certain sins are so high up in I hate it list. I would never do that list. That's not me list. But then there's some sins that's like, oh, we're gonna cover that up under there. We're gonna cover it with social injustice. We're gonna cover it with racial inequality and things of that nature. But if we can just make sure that every single sin, from because it's so funny because we applaud divorce and idolatry when we watch all these celebrity relationships do all these things or have all these divorces and things. We say, oh wait, he was that person again. You remember when they were that person? It's like entertainment to us. But when we sit, when we and then we bring up murder, thou shalt not kill. We look at that and we say, oh, that's crazy. We should. I would never do that. I would never do that. But then racism comes. It's like it's hidden. It's hidden. If we can start treating it the way it is meant to be treated. And again, people will say, well, Joe, that's easier said than done. It's easier said than done because of what you just said. If we can just become together as one and continue to speak or start speaking the same language, it will become easier than done. If I sit here and say I'm going to have a bad day today, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to have a bad day. But if we continue to say racism would never end, guess what's going to happen? Racism would
Right.
never end. If we
Exactly.
continue to say that, yes, there's going to be some bad apples in there, but eventually, if you cannot turn your back to unconditional love on a regular basis. You can't. I unconditionally love my wife every single day. It's contagious. She can't do nothing but love me back. It's conceited. I mean, cocky, but hey, but you cannot turn yourself away from unconditional love. And the thing, here's what happens though. What happens is people get tired of showing unconditional love. We can't get tired with that fight.
Right.
We can't get tired with saying the same thing over and over and over and over. We have to do it over and over and over and over. Because we don't, we're never going to reach the other side of racism. I love what's going on now. I love seeing the things that's going on right now. I love seeing statues being coming down, and I love seeing painting on the ground. And I love seeing some people doing some things that's above us. I love seeing our people getting out the vote now. But again, we cannot stop this. We can't grow tired of doing this, because racism is a sin. If we start viewing it as such, then we're going to start behaving as such.
I think another part of that, though, is we need to push ourselves out of our comfort zones.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed I went to a mixer where people put their tables out and they were inviting other folks to come along to get involved with their organization. And the idea was to diversify your organization. So the whole purpose, every single person in the room was to diversify their portfolio. And what I witnessed as I sat there watching, because I'm an introvert and I don't like to talk to people on a normal, is that I sat there and I watched. And what I watched was I had my little table on this side of the row with my white female partner, and across from us was a Black-owned company with a woman who does very similar work to me, and she had her table. And then down the row was a couple of guys that had some other type of nonprofit that they were looking for. And I watched all the people come into the room. And what I watched was all the men went to the guys' table, all the Black women went to the Black ladies' table, all the white chicks came to me. And I'm like, this is so not helping us diversify.
Right.
Because we are comfortable with people who look like us. So we
Yeah.
go to those places and we stay comfortable in those places. And if you don't push to get uncomfortable, to experience, I know for me, one of my biggest learning experiences was going to church with a Black friend and being the minority for a couple of days and doing it until I got comfortable being the sole white person in the room. Okay. Right. But if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have the depth of understanding of what it was like day to day for my Black friend to be the only Black person in the room.
I'm, like I say, I'm very naive to it, because I have a father who will talk to anybody. My mom and dad did Vegas a couple years ago, and she looked up and he was over there talking to Pete Rose, sitting down beside him talking to Pete Rose. Like, how in the world? Like, my dad can't even go to Food Line without meeting a friend, and so I'm kind of like that. And so I get frustrated with people when I go out to a social mixer like that, and then we get back in the car and you see them stuck up people over there. They didn't even talk to us. I'm like, you didn't even talk to them either. Until we start behaving like God called us to behave and loving one another, then this racism will go away. But until then, if you don't even want, like she said, if you don't even make the effort to speak to somebody who looks different from you, I make that effort. Hey, good morning. How are you? How are you feeling today? I don't even care. I don't need to know, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a conversation that definitely, I think if we can get it right in our places of worship, it will help us in every other avenue. And I recently, over the last couple of years, I was attending a church that was predominantly white, and I really enjoyed it. And I said to myself, and one of the things that made me feel overwhelmingly comfortable was that the minister, he commented, and he said, it's Caucasian minister. He said, if you expect to go to heaven and only deal with the people that you entertain in your home on your sofa, then you really have a misunderstanding about what heaven is all about. Because you've got to, God is waiting for you to get it right here so that you will be okay there, and you'll get there. And he really emphasized the point that at this church, we don't deal with that whole racial piece. So if you have issues, let's talk about it. Let's meet one-on-one so that, you can then truly love your brother or sister like Christ loves us. And, I started thinking about the fact that, man, Sunday mornings can be the most segregated time in our country, where Black folks go to Black church. And I get it that, as slaves, people worship together. I literally am, my great grandmother, like I said, my grandmother was born in 1900 and my grandfather was born in 1903. So my great grandparents were definitely slaves. And, so I get it that they really didn't have a lot of choice, because it was just that you served for, your white master. And then anything else you did outside of that was done with your own group. So I get it that we were acculturated in that manner. But as Black folks, we need to expand our boundaries to include, people from other cultures and other races. It's got to be that we see that there is one God and we all fall under, his love and, his direction, his superiority. And until we get that right, but I think that it definitely starts in the church, because, and it has to be that we probably start, I don't know, committees or something where we can talk about racial insensitivity,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can try to get it right in that arena, and then that will then hopefully pour out to these other places where it can be just as effective. I have appreciated the fact that I've had several of my white friends who have called me and just said, Monica, what I'm seeing that I didn't see before, is really troublesome to me. Like it really bothers me. And, I mean, it's not that I feel like I need to say that I'm sorry to you, because I haven't done anything, I just don't know what to do. And I said to him, be who you are, be who you are, and, continue to, I mean, nothing has changed, as far as we're concerned. But there seems to be just this, space of, uncomfortableness amongst some cultures now watching this whole thing. And it has to be that we are for humanity and
Mm-hmm.
not just one group, because that's just not the way. We have to, um, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, is what I continuously think to myself, that if we don't get it right here, then we're not due to inherit it there. And so, I think that this is definitely something where we have to, we got to work on it, and it starts in the church.
I think it's
Um,
an amazing thing you just said, because it's an analogy that I use with my clients when we go into this realm of God and what's going on and things of that nature. And it's a football game. If you ever notice a football game, you have two teams. You actually have three teams. You have two teams out there, conflict, fighting over everything, fighting for the extra yard, and then you have the officials. And the officials do not take sides. They're not
right,
allowed to take sides. They answer to a higher power, which is, let's say, the NFL, the entire company of the NFL. And that's what the church is supposed to be. They're
right,
supposed to be the officials. And we're supposed to have Philippians 4:8. We're supposed to have thoughts of true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable. We're supposed to have those thoughts. The church is supposed to have those thoughts. So no matter who comes into
right,
my space, or who comes into the church, you're going to experience Philippians 4:8. The thing about churches, I believe, and why we're not witnessing that, is they're more concerned on building a larger building and staying true to themselves than building God's kingdom.
right, right. Absolutely. In a lot of ways. And I think that this is why it's so interesting that, I live by, and I've had to live by in 2020, the scripture that says that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof,
Yes.
and, they that dwell in it. And so, with that has helped me not to be so afraid of what's happening with the COVID and that sort of thing. And I kept thinking to myself, like, it's got to be a reason why during this time we are not able to go and to our various respective places to worship.
Mm.
And so it allowed, I believe that God is we are experiencing stuff day to day, but he knows, he has a master plan, and, we are flowing within his plan. And unfortunately, people have lost their lives. They've been sick, and it has been awful to watch the effects of the COVID-19. But I believe that had COVID-19 had to come first,
Mm-hmm.
and then we had to see and be level, where, COVID-19 put us in a position where we were all equal. So it didn't matter what your race was or your political affiliation and whatever. Medical science says that you are susceptible if you are not social distancing, you're not wearing a mask, you're not taking good care of yourself. There is nothing that's going to stop this virus from attacking your body. And so then all of this happens, and then we see a uniting of people. We see people uniting around right versus wrong, which is that is the kingdom of God falling fresh on this earth. That we can come together, and of course, the excessive protests where people are trying to steal and loot and all that kind of stuff. That really does not represent, but the unified space where last Friday I could see people from all cultures standing around Robert E. Lee's statue, and like I was saying to Jeffrey earlier, here was this man who was divisive in his approach and tried to divide people, and was not for blacks, but yet they have made his space a sanctuary for unity and love, for people coming together. And it's almost like that analogy of Saul changing to Paul and becoming, going from someone who used to murder Christians to being one who followed Christ, devoutly. So it's an awesome time that we are in. It's a good time to be alive. I will say that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
because change is definitely happening right before our eyes, and Confederate statues are coming down. People are rethinking, everything from their company holidays to, who's running the company, what's our mission, what's our vision, why don't we why aren't we more diversified in our approach, and that sort of thing. And it's a really exciting time. So I want to turn the corner to what do we do now. What direction do we go in? What do you all recommend as a solution? Do we keep marching and protesting, or just where do we go from here?
Jermaine, go ahead.
I think protesting is useful to get attention.
Yeah.
And now that everybody's attention is gotten, now we need to do something with that. Now we need to start dialoguing as to what needs to change. How do we change it? What does it mean to defund the police? Because you get all kinds of responses from, oh my gosh, we're going to have a country without any police protection. That's not workable. To okay, what does it look like to do it better? I mean, personally, as a mental health worker, I don't want to go out into the middle of a blazing crisis without police protection.
Right.
I think that would be good to do as a joint effort, right? A CPS worker does not need to be going into a home by themselves where it's going to get explosive because somebody else feels threatened and they go into trauma brain. But at the same time, we don't need young, undertrained officers going in expected to keep it together and take care of the situation when they feel woefully inadequate to the task. We need to have conversation about what does this look like and how do we get there in an ideal world.
Absolutely.
So I think, Jennifer, that was amazing what you just said. Awesome way. Well said. I think there's two things that we need to do, and the first thing we need to agree. I agree with you guys. Continue to protest. While we're protesting, and whatever that protest may look like, I pray that it stays peaceful. But we need to start focusing on the solution. Hear my heart right now. Start focusing on the solution. What has happened has happened. God rest their souls. It has happened. Now, what are we going to do?
Right.
What are we going to do now? What has happened has happened. What does the communication look like now? I tell my wife all the time, jokingly, when I get off the phone with meetings of my in my job, I'm like, that meeting could have been an email, because all we said was the problem. Now we got to meet next week to come up with the solution. But I guarantee we're gonna pick up where we left off, which is stating the problem. And if you continue to state the problem, there will be no conflict resolution. There will be no conflict resolution. The second thing I think we need to do, and this is just an idea I think I like to have, is At work, we have things called a huddle team, a huddle meeting. We used to have them. We have them early in the morning. We used to have like 3 a week. Now we kind of switched it down to 2 a week because there's a lot going on. But in
Right.
these meetings, we're communicating to ourselves. Hey, how are you feeling? What's some things that's going on in the company? Make sure everyone is on the same page. I think every single state, every single city, every single community should have a consistent town hall with your
Mm-hmm.
leaders. Consistent town hall. Now, having these town halls, I need everyone to be transparent, but most importantly, I need everyone to sacrifice their emotions at the door. To
Right.
leave their emotions at the door. You have to walk in with the mindset that I'm here to learn. I'm here to commit myself to instruction, to fix my ears on the knowledge. I think that's in Proverbs, I think. But I'm here to listen to what you have to say and to listen to what I have to say. Because when we walk out of here, we're gonna have a solution. We're focusing on a solution. We're not focusing on that Tim, John, and Daniel just broke into Timmy Ray Ray house 2 weeks ago for unexplained reasons. If we continue to
Sure.
talk about that over and over, then we're not gonna get anywhere. All we're gonna get is attitudes. We're going to get anger. We're going to get depression. We're going to get anxiety. We're going to get worried. But we need to start focusing on a solution and learning how to sacrifice our emotions when people have conversations so we can effectively communicate our feelings and thoughts.
Right. I totally agree. And I think that, the protests they are effective because they bring, they create a picture for whatever the overwhelming concern is, and I think that as an African American, I have been inspired by the number of Caucasians and people represent, Asian Americans and different people marching for what is right. I felt like we have had more momentum now than
Mm-hmm.
we ever have before. Um, but even with that, I think that the protest is a means to kind of, show in a very action-based way, that there is a problem. So we know
Mm-hmm.
that there's a problem, but at some point, we got to have a conversation. So, whereas they have restricted people from kind of being camped out at the Robert E. Lee statue and the area where we have, memorialized people who have lost their lives to police brutality. And so people were upset about that. And so, we got people who they left that statue and Monday night went down to City Hall and basically camped out, was like, we're not going to leave,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to push us out of there. We're going to come over here. And I think that that is where some really good people who have a lot of good stuff to say get caught up in just the activity of authority versus people who,
Mm-hmm.
are trying to get their point across, but not feeling like they're heard. And
It's
so again,
what I'm
y-
sorry.
you know, it kind of erupts into something different because, and I'm waiting for the mayor to say, okay, let's get those people here. Let's, get in an open space where we can spread out, wear our masks, but have some decent conversation. What is it that you want? What do you want to see? Like, what's going to make you feel better? Because if we don't have that, then people are going to keep taking it to the streets and, trying to protest to get attention where there's really no intention to invite them in for conversation around it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation that we're in, and of course, voting. We've got to be more conscientious about voting. I mean, never has there been a more important time for us to get out and vote, to make our voice heard. My next door neighbor, I was coming in yesterday, and my next door neighbor is probably young adult, probably no more than about 22. And so, I spoke to him as I was getting out of my car, and he said to me, he said, "Miss Monica, have you been out to vote?" And I said, "No, not yet, but I'm going." And he was so proud to tell me that he had voted, and I kept thinking to myself, this was probably the first time that he actually exercised his right to vote because it meant something more to him now. And and so, whereas a lot of people didn't really exercise that right yesterday, I'm hoping that many others at least, practice for the major voting experience with these, what we did yesterday, and that sort of thing. But yeah, definitely got to get out and vote. We definitely need to have a conversation around this. And I think we need to do more of this. I think, we've got to be present as mental health facilitators, practitioners. We've got to be at the table. But again, we are still trying to break the stigma around what we do. We understand it and we're passionate about it, but not everybody else feels the same way that we do. And so that's where we've got to kind of push our way into the conversation, because it's really going to affect every it's going to affect our communities, our schools. I just can't even imagine what it's going to be like to deal with the resource officers when the kids finally go back to school. There's going to be an overwhelming fear if they are of a different culture than the student. And so that's where we're going to probably run into some other issues and problems, because we have not taken the time to talk about these issues.
And you put all of that on the overlay of COVID, and everybody is already amped and their fears are up. So we're already, we joke about it at Robin's Hope. It's like we look around in the stores during COVID and it's like everybody's walking around in trauma brain. The only people that seem to know how to navigate it are the folks that have learned to deal with their own individual trauma. Everybody else is in that activated state of everything's a threat. So you put coming back into a school that has been deemed unsafe for months, and then a resource officer who you've been seeing on the media as an unsafe person. And we're just, when we already know schools themselves feel unsafe to kids because of all of the other shootings that have gone on. So yeah, we've got a powder keg on our hands. So if we don't start learning how to deal with our mental health and identifying that I'm activated, I'm feeling unsafe, these are the things that help me calm down. These are the things that help me be resilient in the face of stress. We're going to have huge issues going forward.
Right. I mean,
if I
go
could
ahead.
tell the leaders of our community one thing, I would tell them that you can't address my generation with do this or else, or do this without telling us why. I mean, we've heard that growing up our entire lives. Now we're adults. We feel like we need to know why, and there's not an issue for telling us why. Why can't we be at the statue anymore? That's all we want to know.
Right.
I know, and there's some children that I work with them that deal with oppositional defiant behaviors. My in-home students or my in-home clients love them to death, because all they want to know is why can't I do this? And once I tell them why, the benefits of it, the issues of it, the consequences of it, the effects of it, then they say, you know what? I understand why I can't smoke weed at 13, or why I can't cuss my mother out at 12. I understand why I have to go to school every single day, because you just expressed to me why. And so what happens is, again, we go back to the communication. Well, police officers are not telling us what is the academy doing, or you're not telling us. You're just telling us we can't do that. And when you tell my generation that we can't do something, you can ask my father. You tell me I can't do something, 9 times out of 10 I'm gonna want to do it even more.
Right.
And so that's the thing. It's okay to tell us why. If not, you're going to get looting. You're going to get horrible protests. You're going to get horrible situations at protests. That's what I mean. I'm sorry. But you're going to get graffiti every single way, because now you're telling us we can't do it. So if you can tell us we can't do it, we're going to make a way to do it.
Right.
Okay.
And just not even replacing that thought with, something else. Like, I mean, we know in working with individuals, when we get into behavior modification, if you take something away, you have to replace it with something else. Mm-hmm. You can't just leave it void. And that is just, a characteristic of humanity. And so, again, like you said, if you tell people you cannot go and camp out for the cause at this area, tell them why, but allow them to share their passion as well. Don't just tell them, we're afraid that somebody's going to get hurt if you pull these monuments down. We're afraid that something's going to happen, and that sort of thing. And then when you add to it that, some of the neighbors feel like they need to claim their neighborhood back, then you are entering into the status quo piece, where that's really what got us into all of this in the first place.
Mhm.
So that's not a really good resolve either. And so I think that we've got to allow folks a medium to speak, and an opportunity to say what's on their minds, to share. And even in arenas like this, we can just create conversation, but we definitely can't sweep it under the rug and act like it doesn't exist. We have to be intentional and ask people, hey, do you want to talk about what's happening with COVID? Do you want to talk about what's happening with the police brutality and things like that? When we see stuff happening, we can't be silent anymore. We've got to go there and ask questions, and allow people to be okay to talk about it. And particularly our folks that we know have known diagnosis. I can only imagine just how they are grappling with all of these uncertainties that are going on in our community, in our world right now, because it's troublesome for me, without a standard diagnosis or anything like that. It takes its toll. And and so I am I just want to offer this quote from Elijah McClain. We were attempting to try to get the audio of what he was saying when he was dealing with the police, but we couldn't get it clearly. So I wanted to read it. It says, "I can't breathe. I have my ID right here. My name is Elijah McClain. That's my house. I was just going home. I'm an introvert. I'm just different. That's all. I'm so sorry. I have no gun. I don't do that stuff. I don't do any fighting. Why are you attacking me? I don't even kill flies. I don't eat meat, but I don't judge people who do eat meat. Forgive me. All I was trying to do was become better. I will do it. I will do anything. Sacrifice my identity. I'll do it. You are phenomenal. You are beautiful, and I love you. Try to forgive me. I am a mood Gemini. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ow, that really hurt. You are all very strong. Teamwork makes the dream work." He's crying now. "Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to do that. I can't breathe correctly." He proceeds to vomit from the pressure to his chest and his neck. And then right after that, he died. So, last words of Elijah McClain. So, with that, uh, being our closing quote, I just want to thank you guys for your participation in this forum, because I believe I was texting back and forth with our technical folks. That would be Tim, who kind of set up this space. I want to thank Tim and Nadia. We've had at least about 8 to 10 people who have been viewing us live. So my prayer is that somebody heard something different from one of us that has inspired them or encouraged their passion around doing what's right, and seeking the good and humanity for everybody involved, with no race, no political affiliation, no class involved in that. We've just got to be about people and be about humanity, and that is where we truly show that we at least believe that there is a power that's higher than us, and one who loves unconditionally. And I think if we can follow that path, I think that we will eventually be okay, and we will make it. So just want to thank you guys. Give everybody a round of applause. Jennifer Kell and Jeffrey Culberson, we truly, truly thank you. Serenity Counseling Services of Virginia, we want to stay connected and keep the dialogue going. So we will definitely have you all sharing with us again in the future really soon, because this is good conversation and we got to keep it going. So thank you all for your time and your participation. And I wish you all safety. And in the words of Don Cornelius, love and peace and soul and a good dinner. He didn't say that. I did, though.
Amen. Amen.
Yes,
That
yes.
one,
Absolutely. Well, we thank you guys, and we will be back to this forum again sometime soon.
Amen. God bless.
Kudos. Thank you.